What a terrible day for the Trump haters. I mean, look at the Republican National Conference. Look at Donald Trump walking in for the first time, showing the public his wound from the Saturday assassination attempt on his life, the bullet that came within a centimetre or two of killing him. The crowd at the conference cheering someone who now looks invincible. Yes, sure was a terrible day for US President Joe Biden, for the Democrats, and for our own ABC, which last night screened one of the most dishonest and deluded hit jobs I've yet seen from them on Trump. Yesterday was terrible for the deranged Trump haters for one reason above all. Trump put the lie to their poison, including the ABC poison last night. And what we're now seeing is the collapse of that media narrative that Trump is a dictator, a hater bent on revenge. Look, I'm not so surprised really that so many of our media and political elites, ABC watchers, many of them, have fallen for this fake picture. When the ABC is so biased that it still hasn't apologised for running this three-part series on Four Corners some years ago, falsely accusing Trump of stealing the 2016 election by colluding with Russia.
Tonight, we begin our special three-part investigation into the story of the century, the election of US President Donald Trump and his ties to Russia.
I might have thought that the ABC would pull its head in after that, but last night, I have to tell you, it was probably even worse, with the first of a two-part series painting Trump as a dictator if he's elected again in November. Yet their very first bit of evidence of Trump the dictator was actually a lie, a piece of trickery to make it seem Trump threatened to incite bloody violence if he didn't win in November.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the country.
I do worry there's a real group of American citizens who are willing to engage in violence for Donald Trump.
Oh, that was just so dishonest, because let me show you the full quote and what the ABC left out. Trump was in fact talking there about imposing huge tariffs on Chinese-made cars. And he was warning there'd be a bloodbath for the US car industry, for jobs, if he was stopped.
Put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars if I get elected. Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath.
How dare the ABC doctor that quote to give such a false impression? And how dare it do it again in that show, this time to paint Trump as a Hitler in waiting.
In Donald Trump's vision for America, centuries-old institutions are there to be dismantled. And the checks and balances established by the Founding Fathers are impediments to absolute power.
He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one.
The dictator bit again. Once more, the full quote shows that Trump was actually joking at the critics running this ridiculous Trump is a Hitler line. He was playing with them, with his audience at least, on the joke.
We love this guy. He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one. We're closing the border, and we're drilling. After that, I'm not a dictator.
Honestly, in running those deceitfully edited videos last night and taking the most dramatically negative and false interpretation of them, the ABC was just repeating exactly the lies that Joe Biden once again trotted out in his latest interview. And I've got to say, it was another really sad outing. It was, this is Biden is doing a blizzard of these interviews now after being in hiding for so long to try to convince Americans that he's compos mentis and he can handle an interview without going, gaga or having a brain freeze like in the debate. Trouble is, Biden again babbled while he was forced to admit he was wrong to have said last week that Trump should be put in the bullseye. And out came that dictator lie again.
Look, the truth of the matter was, what I guess I was talking about at the time was, there was very little focus on Trump's agenda.
Yeah, the term was bullseye.
It was a mistake to use the word. I didn't say crosshairs. I meant bullseye. I meant focus on him. Focus on what he's doing. Focus on his policies. Focus on the number of lies he told in the debate. Focus. I mean, there's a whole range of things that, look, I'm not the guy that said I want to be a dictator on day one.
Oh, that dictator bit. Oh, and then he trotted out that same bloodbath lie that the ABC also used last night.
My opponent is engaged in that rhetoric. He talks about there'll be a bloodbath if he loses.
But today, and maybe it was more important really, Trump actually nailed another lie. He debunked it simply by some decisions he made. Totally debunked another anti-Trump lie. The ABC last night called its hit job on Trump vengeance, as if Trump is just out for revenge against anyone who ever done him wrong. In fact, today we saw a Trump who was totally different from that. Now, for a start, he invited to this Republican conference the head of America's most famous union, a union that past Republican candidates would have considered almost evil to have in the same room.
It's an honor to be the first Teamster in our 121-year history to address the Republican National Convention.
And the reason he was there is that the Teamsters have seen Trump reaching out to even them to make deals for the working poor.
You can have whatever opinion you want, but one thing is clear. President Trump is a candidate who is not afraid of hearing from new, loud, and often critical voices. And I think we all can agree, whether people like him or they don't like him, in light of what happened to him on Saturday, he has proven to be one tough SOB.
That's going to go down a treat with the working class. But even more telling was Trump today announcing his pick as vice president. The pick, 39-year-old J.D. Vance, is a senator from Ohio. And in doing that, he was forgiving Vance, this guy that's supposedly out for revenge, he was forgiving Vance for once calling Trump the worst names, the sort of abuse the ABC would have loved.
You've said, I'm a never Trump guy, never liked him, terrible candidate, idiot if you voted for him, might be America's Hitler, might be a cynical a-hole, cultural heroine, noxious and reprehensible. Those are things that the left is going to come after you, and they're probably going to be put in ads should you be chosen as the VP pick. How do you deal with them now?
Yeah, well, I think the simple answer is you've got to respect the American people enough to just level with them. Look, I was wrong about Donald Trump. I didn't think he was going to be a good president, Brett. He was a great president, and it's one of the reasons why I'm working so hard to make sure he gets a second term. I think you should. When you're wrong about something, you should change your mind and be honest with people about that fact.
Now, Vance wasn't just picked now for being a Trump loyalist, someone who sucking up to get ahead. He also represents exactly what Trump says is about, helping the working poor make good, and not simply by playing victim politics, throwing handouts around and that. J.D. Vance grew up dirt poor himself, and he wrote about it in his bestseller, The Hillbilly Elegy. Fine book, I recommend you read it. It's about how his mother struggled with addictions, how he was raised instead by his grandparents, neither with an education. Hillbillies, they're called. He talked about the hillbilly culture, didn't have much truck with the self-pitying, but they're factory fodder. He said, look, they were my neighbours, they were my friends. But he really thought there was something he could do to get out of this. And the film of his book, well, it spelled it out.
I know I could have done better. But you got to decide, you want to be somebody or not.
And Vance did. He joined the Marines, served in Afghanistan, found his confidence, found his voice, got a scholarship to go to one of America's finest universities, Yale, and topped its law school, became a successful venture capitalist. And now this. Potential vice president? It's the American dream, as sold by Donald Trump in his powerful new ad aimed at the working class.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
No one can say that Trump hasn't lived that very message himself. Now, there are lots of reasons not to like Trump. I know that. I mean, I've hated his abuse, hated his reaction to losing the last election, called it out at the time. I really don't like his weakness in the defense of Ukraine. I think that's a real big flaw. But I admire his courage. I respect the people he's fighting for. I respect his fighting for the poor. And I trust his strength against, say, China more than I'd trust Biden's. And I reckon J.D. Vance will not be the last person who will now change his mind about Donald Trump if the media start telling the truth.